So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining Citizens Climate University tonight. You've landed on the Endorser Program 301. Tonight's lesson is really designed to share some stories of success and to talk about the different ways that you might approach a business or a community leader or even a local or state representative than you would with a member of Congress. So, you know, what's been effective, what are some strategies that these volunteers have used to get local endorsement. I am going to step aside here and I'm going to turn it over to Peter Brin from Houston, and he's going to get us started tonight. Peter, you're up.
All right, thanks Ricky for getting everything started, and thanks everybody for coming on. Looks like a pretty good sized crowd tonight. So my name is Peter Brin. I'm the Conservative Director for CCL based down in Houston. I'm also, another hat that I wear, aside from the hard hat on the screen there, is Endorser Program Coordinator. And that's really the role that I'm fulfilling in tonight's presentation. My background, I was an engineer with ExxonMobil for about 8 years, and I'll jump back on in a second, but I want to hand it over to Joe to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Joseph Sherrill. I'm a chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, and have been certified by the U.S. Green Building Institute to design and build green buildings. I'm with the New Jersey Raritan Valley chapter. And our chapter has 12 endorsements to date. Tonight I'm going to tell you about the 3 endorsements I got from our elected representatives in Trenton.
Bill Barron here, and I am the Wild West Regional Coordinator. So I cover Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. I'm also one of the leaders of the Salt Lake City chapter, and I'm a third-time federal climate candidate. I'm running for U.S. Senate and looking forward to next Tuesday.
Great. And Craig?
I'm Craig Preston. I live in California, Southern California. Costa Mesa is the actual city, and I work in Anaheim for a software company doing financial management. Love getting endorsements and found some success, so I'm glad to be on the call to share some of what we've tried. And I'm Southern California coordinator for this area.
Great, thanks, Craig. So I'd just like to put tonight's presentation in context. This is sort of the third installment of what we're doing with the Endorser program for Citizens Climate University. The first of which, the 101, was sort of a program overview. It talked about why this is an important initiative and what the program is, how it supports that initiative. We then had 201, which spoke specifically to using the Endorser database. That's the tool that we use to manage all of the endorser contact information that we have. It's growing pretty dramatically, so that was kind of a how-to. This is 301, which is now going to provide some guidance on getting endorsements, both identifying endorsers and building the relationship, and that's why we have the folks we have on the call tonight. They've all had some really good successes. So as Joe mentioned before, he's going to talk about elected state leaders and some of the successes he's had in New Jersey. Bill Barron's going to talk about working with a specific industry, specifically the ski and winter sports industry. He's had a lot of success there. I'm really excited to have Craig on. He's going to talk about what they've done in Southern California in terms of actually organizing themselves, not so much about the endorsements he's gotten, but really how they've organized themselves as a team in that whole region. And I'm going to finish up with some overview on various tools that are available on CCL Community to help you in this process. We continue to add tools as time goes on, so there's a lot there. And with that, Joe, I'm going to hand it back to you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So I'm going to tell you tonight about the 3 endorsements we got from our elected state leaders in New Jersey, 3 of the 12. So the first one was a meeting with Senator Kip Bateman, who's a Republican, and he has a 100% rating on the environmental. So 3 CCL people attended, and we introduced ourselves and stated why climate change is personally important to each of us. It seems like Kip was just waiting for a group like CCL to come through the door and stand with him on the environment. He signed the CFD on the spot. This blew me away. It's a good idea to get an easy one up front to build confidence. The second meeting was with Assemblyman Jack Citarelli, who's a Republican. 3 CCLers attended that one. I brought a photo of my granddaughter, Hadley, and, said that this is the reason that I'm trying to address climate change and so that she will have a livable world. I mentioned the Bateman endorsement. This is very important to, name drop. He believed in climate change. However, he believed that technology would take care of it. We explained that technology might not come along fast enough, and by employing CFD, we would accelerate technological advancement and also lessen the amount of fossil fuel used. He did not completely buy it, but he did sign the benign endorsement to address climate change. Post-meeting, I met with him for breakfast to try to recruit him as a conservative advisor. He said he was preparing to run for governor, which he did declare, and he could not commit at this time. The third meeting was with Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker, who's a Democrat. 3 CCLers attended that one. He had introduced the 6 environmental bills into the Assembly. We met with his aide, because he wasn't available, mentioned that we had endorsements from 2 state representatives, and I needed to follow up several times with his aide and send the endorser form again. Zwicker signed the benign one, which we scratched our heads but chose not to pursue it at the time. Then 3 months later, we made a presentation to the Bound Brook Borough Council. They signed the CFD endorsement. So at that point, I followed up with Zwicker because of that success. And I said, we were expecting, why didn't you sign the CFD endorsement? Could we provide any additional information? After another follow-up, he did sign the CFD endorsement, and so success begets success. So, summing it up, what worked, being businesslike, having an agenda, coming into the meeting, following up. Follow-up is very important. I must have followed up 6 times with one of the offices, name-dropping the fact that we got endorsements from other elected leaders and groups. What didn't work, ask them if they would follow up with other party members. Simple agenda, 5 points, introductions, why climate change is important personally to each of us, explain CCL and its objectives, listen, hear what their response is, reply to their response, and then ask for the endorsement. Couple of handouts, not too many. If they want more, they'll ask for them. Try business cards, thank you note, and visuals. Thank you for your attention, and I'll turn it over to Bill Barron.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
So I'm, like Peter introduced me, he shared that I'm focused on a specific industry, and that focus has been on the ski industry. So some of the successes that we've experienced through the effort has been the endorsement of the Ski Area Association, Protect Our Winners, Aspen Ski Corp. We also have endorsements from a couple in outdoor equipment companies, as well as a number of professional skiers and boarders that are mainly involved with Protect Our Winners. Want to go to the next slide? Oh, sorry. One of those endorsements is from Angel Collins, and she is a professional athlete with Protect Our Winners, and she's, because of her name recognition, it's been a great opportunity for us in CCL to have her do this endorsement because she has such exposure in the ski industry. And so if you go to Angel Collins and Carbon Fee and Dividend, you can see the endorsement that she created on our behalf that's gotten a lot of exposure online. So talking about the process on how I have worked on developing this focus in the specific industry, the key to me at first is the, the connections. And so the work that I do with the ski industry is definitely different than the approach I would take with members of Congress. I see it more as kind of a networking opportunity where one effort leads to another. And so, for instance, the first endorsement that I got with the ski area was the Aspen Ski Corp, and that led me through connections with the Aspen Ski Corp to protect our winners. And protect our winners, when they endorsed the legislation, it then allowed me the opportunity to approach the National Ski Area Association, and being able to say that these other industries have supported our proposal made it a pretty, considering it made it a pretty easy sell. And there's the connections that I can see potential in is, for instance, the professional athletes who have such popularity and they're on social media and they're sponsored by equipment manufacturers. So it creates this opportunity to really build one after the other. The next thing is that I think is important really in anything that we do with CCL is the relationship building. I think it's really fundamental to everything that we do. But for me, in this effort with the ski industry, it's a personal thing for me too, because I have worked in the ski industry for a number of years. And so it's that relationship building came from a personal place, and where I was able to share to the people that I meet with to get endorsements and be able to make it personal, why it's important to me, why I'm concerned about the ski industry fading away and how it affects the water supplies that we can get, et cetera, et cetera. That, then the last thing that I wanted to touch on is how important it is to follow up. And the follow-up is something that I just want to share that, in getting these endorsements, they don't necessarily happen overnight. It can take years. And it's just being patient and persistent, and trying not to be overbearing at the same time. So to me, there's a delicate balance on how to follow up and to just keep the ball rolling without pushing too hard or too far. And so what this is creating an opportunity for us in the ski industry is now I have these professional athletes and I'm working on reaching out to them to incorporate them into meetings with our members of Congress. So where they are constituents, now we can try to get them plugged into meetings, which people are really have been drawn to as far as having these athletes attend meetings. So there's one thing just tends to lead to the other in this effort. And so I think that there's great value in, if somebody has an interest in pursuing a specific industry, if it's something that you've been involved in, it's a great way to follow it through and be connected at a personal level. So I think the bottom line for me is the knowing that these endorsements can take time, and don't be discouraged. And that if you do it from a place of appreciation, like we all are trained to do, and relationship building, the success is there, and it will be there. I have recently set up an action team in community for the ski and outdoor industry. And so I'm encouraging anybody who's interested in working in that specific area to join in, and then we can work on networking from throughout the country on focusing on this specific industry. And I think that's it. Thanks, Peter.
Great, thanks, Bill. Let's go to Craig next.
Great. My part of this call is to talk about coordinating, and in Southern California, we've taken some of these things and tried to apply them in different ways, learn the hard way sometimes. But as you know, CCL provides a lot of tools to all of us and see how we can do this to build political will. Joseph mentioned that when he goes to his meetings in New Jersey, it was at least 3 of them that went. And so that just reminds me of how, well, we don't want to do this alone. We all have different skills and talents and how we can apply this. So I'll just go through our first attempt that we were thinking, how do we build political will through using this endorsement concept? Our North Orange County chapter took this on, and some of us helped in to go after chambers of commerce. We were so inspired by Jay Butera's efforts in South Florida and wanted to just follow along with what his success was. We identified 9 chambers in the district, and then there were volunteers that came together from the CCL chapter to start researching how to find them, reach out to them, and set up meetings. We would have monthly conference calls, or sometimes even every 2 weeks, to just see what the status was and how the questions were going and motivate each other. And as they would report back, there were a few presentations, there was some movement, but we found it was a little harder than we thought, that Jay had maybe a secret mechanism to it, but we didn't find that here in Orange County, California, being as easy to get chambers on board. It was going to take more education and more results and more even building political will within their membership to push the leaders on board. So it turned out to be 0 endorsements from the chambers, but along the way, we did meet other people and get involved in those presentations and ask individuals to endorse. And so there are about 85 endorsements so far, using gathering them along the way over those 8 months, particularly with Kiwanis clubs and faith leaders, and that got us some momentum and then was building from there, because it seems like a crowd gathers a crowd. When we say the Father so-and-so from this Catholic church endorsed, it was much easier for other people to join on that would affiliate. I wanted to share that I personally, at one point on one of these calls, just was challenged to put out a number myself, that I'm going to go for 6 endorsements in the next 3 weeks. And I found I myself had been blocked a little bit of how am I going to do this? I had printed the forms, had them both hand, but to actually go out and get somebody to endorse, it was just take that first step. And so I'm walking down around Anaheim at lunchtime, and there was a librarian in a certain part of the library area, and went up and asked, and she endorsed CF&D right on the spot, and it got my first endorsement. So it was very motivating. And then I just said, my intro was that we often go to DC and meet with members of Congress, but they say, do the people back home care? And so I'm here to talk to you today and get some support. Just that little intro I wanted to share, though, of just saying that we go meet with these members of Congress and they say, do the people back home care? And this was a way I think that Peter and others had the vision for the endorsement project, that we could show more support. All right, this is my other slide about just our second attempt, that since that was a little harder, we went into something we're calling tiger teams. This was birthed out of the idea that, as we know, Mark Reynolds has said, we're going to go over the fence and hit a home run next year and pass CF&D. And so we wanted to break that down into how do we do that? And if we use the Jay Butera idea and mixing in with some of the things that our other leaders in DC have done, Danny Richter, that we need about 50 members of Congress, Republican, on board. And so Jay Butera was thinking we need to get about 60 endorsers per member of Congress to get them to come on board. And so we thought, let's try it. Let's see if we can get 60 endorsers in 60 days. And so instead of us spreading out around the state, we just picked one area and pooled some resources together, and 3 or 4 or 5 of us came together and did a conference call, sometimes weekly, sometimes every other week, to coordinate and who wanted to do a research part of it, to research different things. You'll see here we broke into these task teams, and so we coordinated through these conference calls and then broke into 4 different areas, of one team being in research, that they would just go out there and use their skills to find businesses, faith leaders, community leaders, that elected officials that we could reach out to. They were just making a big database using Google Docs of these names and contacts. The next team was the email team that would take those emails and send out massive emails. It went pretty smooth because we had a template that we made, and all this is available if you want to see some of these templates and use it yourself. We would send out about 30 emails a week, and we're then considering other ways too that we can mail letters if we don't have an email address to some of the businesses. And then after a few days, we had the phone calling team jump into action, start doing follow-up phone calls to see if they received the email, if it needs to be sent again, what they thought about it, if they were going to endorse, or if we could meet with them to explain more. And so that process has been going on now. We're in about our 6th week of this 60-day period. And then the endorser database team would be wants to make sure that this information is getting into the CCL database ahead of time, so we know we don't cross overlap, but also at the end to show the status and the endorsements that are coming in. Over the 6 weeks, we've gotten 8 endorsements, not 60 yet, but we're working hard to get those. But 3 of the endorsements were CEOs of major companies here in the Irvine area, and then 1 elected person running for office. And then we're reaching out now to CCLers that are in our database, knowing that a lot of them, they have titles of somewhere they've worked or do work, or a community involvement, a PTA involvement, whatever it is. So we're now reaching out to them to have them in our database so we can show our size and our effect on the community. So we're up to 8 now, 8 endorsers. All right, next slide, if there is one, Peter. We're seeking support to build these Tiger teams. Our pilot program will finish in 2 weeks. And if you want information, you can reach out to me. And we have a toolkit that we're building to share some of these tools to make it easier for people that want to try it where they are. And a particular thing is, it doesn't have to be where you are. People remotely can focus on a district in Texas if they want, and have a team that would coordinate with the local people there, and then go for it to blitz, in a sense, to get endorsements quickly in a certain area. That's it.
Great, thanks, Craig. Well, before I jump into the final section, which is really going to talk about some of the tools that are available on CCL Community to support this, I just was taking a few notes as y'all were talking of some of the themes that I seem to hear, and it's kind of funny. I have 2 different themes, and both seem to have merit. Certainly, my experience has been that you focus on building a relationship, as Bill talked about. You start meeting more folks, and as Joe talked about, you use one endorsement to help get future ones and reference that, so you kind of have a snowball effect. So on the one hand, I think that's a really great and important way to do it. But then another theory is sort of the shotgun approach, which is to send 30 emails a week or a bunch of form letters and see who signs, and maybe I get a few signatures out of it. So, both can work. And I think depending on, what your team is doing, I think either can be appropriate. So it's interesting that you shared that, Craig. Part of the reason I asked Craig to be on this particular call is I've been really impressed with how the team in Southern California has organized themselves with their regular calls, and the size of the team, and the engagement of the team, and the focus of the team. So really good work to you guys. All right, well, I'm going to finish up by pointing out some of the actual resources on CCL Community that are available to all of you. Like most resources on Community, if you start by clicking the Volunteer Resources tab at the top, and then you navigate, in this case, to the Grass Tops Outreach button on the left, the very top link will take you to the Endorser Program homepage. A lot of the other links are kind of the same links as what I'm about to show, the other ones that are on the screen there. But if you click the Endorser Program homepage, you'll get a screen that looks something like this. And it basically breaks down the endorsement process into sort of 4 general steps. One is to identify who you're going to engage, what endorsers you want to talk to. Step 2 is to cultivate the relationship. Step 3 is managing that relationship using the endorser database. And step 4 is demonstrating that support using reports. So once we get all these endorsements, how do we present them? How do we use them when we communicate with Congress? And that's what some of those links are for. But tonight's conversation is going to focus on the first 2 elements, identify and cultivate. So just want to spend a few minutes on some general and then specific resources for identifying who to reach out to. So if you're new to this and you don't have a team going yet, and you're really just kind of dipping your toe in the water, you might say, well, where do I start? Well, the best place to start, and somebody mentioned this before, is start with start with an easy one. Get some easy ones where you expect to get an endorsement. The head of a local environmental club, or a faith leader from a more progressive church, or something like that. So a place where you expect to get support. And what that'll allow you to do is, it'll just kind of get you in the flow of things. It'll help you to practice your pitch, and it'll let you rack up some early successes, which kind of helps to build support within the rest of the group. It sounds like that's what Craig did with the librarian who was sitting on the bench. And then, another thing is you can be very strategic about this. Ask Congress when you're in your meetings, your lobby meetings, especially when things might seem like they're, sometimes you get to that point in a meeting and there's that awkward pause. A good thing to throw out there is, hey, we're reaching out to community leaders. We're trying to create political will in your district to make it easier for the member to support this. Who should we be talking to? And that does a couple of things. A, it could give you some good leads. B, it engages that staffer or that member of Congress to sort of say, hey, we're asking for your help in this. You're not, even if you don't support our policy yet, you're not off the hook. You're going to help us to try to help you to support this. So that's kind of a good thing to consider including in your meetings. And the rest of these examples, faith leaders, leaders of other causes in the region, elected officials like mayors, university presidents, certainly chambers of commerce and big businesses. Those are really important. Veterans groups. These are all contacts that you would be working with your chapter on at the local level, and liaisons can offer some input. The liaison can say, hey, here are some big employers in the district you might want to go chase after. So that's if you're working locally. Then of course you can work at the regional level, like Craig was talking about, where Southern California is looking across the whole region. And multiple chapters are working on, and these could be like state politicians, big industries in the region, big businesses, regional media. And then if you're part of a national action team, you may be doing some outreach to, so for example, the healthcare action team outreaches to national healthcare professional societies, things like that. So you might be reaching out at the national level to think tanks or national media, big lobbying groups, things like that. So the endorser program really is here to support all of that. And these are just some sort of generic examples of the types of endorsers that we tend to look for. Now, a new resource that I don't think a lot of people are aware yet has been added, and it is incredibly rich. And I strongly, strongly suggest that everybody on this call incorporate this into your planning. About 3-4 months ago, we added a new tool called MOC Connections. And here's a screenshot from my member of Congress. And what we've done is, before the database was really just all endorsers. Now we've created the option to link endorsers to multiple members of Congress. And so what that allows us to do now is to start to massively import information from other sources that help us to be more strategic in who we're engaging. So if you go to the MOC Connections tab, the default will be your member of Congress, but you can really search any member of Congress. And our IT team has been uploading information that is helpful as you're figuring out who to approach into the database. So if you go to your member of Congress, what you'll see today, you should see the top donors for the member of Congress. You should see most of the local chambers of commerce in that region. I think, any cities and mayors and elected officials have all been loaded in there. So if you haven't loaded those things in yourself yet, they should now be loaded in there for most of the more major cities and organizations in the district. We're also looking right now at a resource that allows us to identify the biggest employers in the district. There's some technical things that we have to work out on that too, but that's coming soon. So if you're looking to really just jump into this and say, where should we put our, where should we spend our time? This could be a really good resource going to the MOC Connections tab. Now, the other thing that was kind of alluded to earlier, we talked a lot about getting leaders' letters signed, right? So once you identify your endorser, you also have to figure out, what do you want the endorser to do? Do you want, ultimately, what do you want them to do? Do you want them to sign the leader's letter? Do you want them to join you with a meeting in a lobby meeting? If it's an organization like a Chamber of Commerce, probably the ask there, if you're asking the president, him or herself, to sign on, then a leader's letter is probably appropriate. If they're willing to do that as an individual, that'd be fine. But a chamber as an organization probably isn't going to sign a leader's letter. What it might do, though, is add fee and dividend to its legislative positions. And if we're able to get them to do that, then we would capture that in the database as well and make sure that's communicated with members of Congress. Or do you just want the endorser? Maybe you talk to somebody who is going to be a pretty easy sell and they'll sign quickly, but then they can also help you to find other potential endorsers, and make introductions. So there's a lot of different goals. Signing the leader's letter is an important one, and it's a core one, but it's certainly not the only one. You could ask for one or more of these potential goals with the endorser. So going back to the CCL community page, under the Identify section, there are a couple of resources I just wanted to point out. If you go onto the Endorser program homepage, you'll see the link that says forum. That takes you to our community forum. You can sign up, join the forum, ask questions, answer questions from others, share best practices, things like that. We do have a monthly call. You can click on the monthly call button and see the date of the next and time of the next call and dial-in information. And we also have an email help desk, which is endorse@citizensclimate.org. So these are just sort of the basic tools that are there to help people when they're starting out. And the next step in the process is cultivating the relationship. And the other gents tonight spoke a lot to this, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But you know, just in general, we want to, as Bill said, this is really developing a relationship, you know, and you're going to want to develop those relationships in some cases before you even ask about signing a leader's letter. In some cases, maybe you do it at the first meeting. Some cases, maybe not. Depends how it goes and who the audience is. But, you know, the first meeting typically is just you introducing yourself and CCL, learning more about the endorser, and sharing some ideas of how the endorser might get engaged, you know, depending on their level of interest. You can consider, you know, a progression of questions like this, where you start out and just say, you know, are you and your organization interested in climate change and solutions? Has this issue come up in discussions? Do you think Congress should take action? Would you be willing to join the conversation that we're having with Congress? And, you know, eventually when you're ready to ask the question, once you get to that point, you could ask them if they'd be willing to sign a leader's letter, write an editorial, or add carbon pricing to the legislative agenda. Again, depending on the organization, the appropriate ask may change. So again, just to wrap up, going back to the Endorser program homepage, a couple of resources that are worth pointing out. The URL, citizensclimatelobby.org/leaders. Keep that in your bookmarks. That is a public page that is there to explain the program to potential endorsers. It answers common questions like in a 501c3 sign-on, those kinds of things. And it also offers an external portal for people to come in and sign directly online. The page looks like this. So if you go to citizensclimatelobby.org/leaders, this is the top of the page. There's more at the bottom. But again, this allows folks to sign on immediately. One of the things that I will point out is that, and this is just an administrative thing, but if you have an endorser already entered into the database and they come in and sign in this unsolicited fashion, that's going to create a duplicate, and our admins are able to merge those, and they should catch it, but it's kind of tough, so they don't always catch it. So there is a tool in the database where you can send somebody a link to sign. You know, if you enter in ABC company and you say, okay, I want to send this to the president, you can click an electronic request and they'll get an email request to sign the endorsement letter. So that's really the proper way to do it if somebody's already in the database. But if somebody's not yet in the database, they can just go into this leader site and sign directly, and then we won't have the duplicate issue. So, but anyway, long story short, this is a great resource, and I encourage everybody to use it as much as you can. There's also some introduction email templates that are available that just kind of help if you're starting to start a conversation or request a meeting. And the last thing I want to point to are the targeted outreach pages. These are specific outreach pages. A comment came up before the call tonight about a certain type of outreach to Rotary clubs, for example. There is a section that I don't think is well known, but is very rich with information called Targeted Outreach Pages on Community. And if you go to it, you can click the button I just showed, or again, you can go back to Volunteer Resources, and under Grasstops Outreach, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see Targeted Outreach. And there's a page for academic outreach, business community, conservative groups, faith-based groups, etc. And each one of these pages is generally administered by one of the action teams, and they provide, they continue to grow. Some pages aren't as content rich as others, but there's a lot of good stuff out there for you to use. So, but they would include things like handouts that are tailored for specific audiences, questions and answers, sometimes a help desk email for certain types of questions, templates, those kinds of things. So strongly encourage you to take a look at that if you're reaching out to a certain group. And with that, we're going to wrap up, and everybody's email is going to be on the screen in case you have any questions. You can contact folks directly.